spent the first 10 minutes of this just laughing at Mujidah. She moved to UAE, back to Nigeria. She moved to Belgium, back to Nigeria. And she moved to Canada finally. Like, I had to ask her, like, when are you going back to Nigeria? You know. But it was a hilarious episode because it's really a story of resilience, of someone just saying, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I am gonna move. So only had to her story herself, honestly, because gosh, it was so funny. Enjoy. In the pre-show, you're talking about you moved to UAE at some point, you moved to Belgium at some point, you moved to Canada at some point. Like, tell me a bit about like what was going on in your head, like when you were doing all that. Move to UAE, back to Nigeria, move to Belgium, back to Nigeria, and then move to Canada. Like, okay, you haven't gone back to Nigeria at this point, but
Thankfully, I'm still here. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing for me. I've always wanted to travel out of Nigeria. Always. Like my university, I remember telling my mom like I'd really love to travel out. I was applying to schools and all of that. My mom was like, "No, I'm my only daughter, Kiniko Kiniko, and she's not going to let me travel all by myself and go to a strange man's country and all of that." I was like, "Okay, fine." I gave up at that point. But then when I was in school, I joined this organization called ISEC, and ISEC is like a leadership development thingy, but the greatest perk they had was they had travel opportunities. So you could go out of your country to other people's country to go volunteer and do stuff. So I did the organization like really hardcore because I wanted to travel. So at the end of my uni, I got an opportunity to go do ISEC in the UAE, and that was how I left at that point. But unfortunately, number one, I left with like a visitor visa that I was hoping to convert into like a working visa when I landed. And of course, the organization that I went to work with, they still had some issues with their legality. So they couldn't exactly give me like a working permit or anything like that. And my plan was that as soon as I landed, I'll do the organization, but also try to find somebody who could hire me and give me papers. But obviously, that didn't work out. And thank God that I booked a return ticket when I left because I was so broke. I was so it was crazy. Like I really tried to find something, but it just didn't work out, and I didn't really have the support that I needed to do anything. So when I hear people say things like, "Oh, just go. When you get there, you figure it out," I'm
oh
like,
no, yeah.
I'm shaking. So it was a really really interesting and expansive 3 months for me because I didn't have legality, I didn't have funds, I didn't have anything. All I had was my return ticket, and thank God for that. And that experience really just taught me like, if I'm going to do this again, I need a better plan and at least a much more solid job offer. So I came back to Nigeria. I remember I was applying to jobs from the airport, the flight back home. I was already applying to jobs in Nigeria. Like, okay, I gotta find something. I can't remember in broke. And thankfully, I did find something. And a couple of months into that, another opportunity came up again through ISEC, and that was Belgium. So this one, much more solid. It was along the lines of what I studied in school. I did computer engineering, and I was also doing HR in ISEC. So it was like a little bit of both. And it just felt perfect for me. I had the interviews, I did the documentation. Let's not even get to visa drama. Like, to get the visa, I couldn't do it in Lagos. I had to fly down to Abuja. And then the lady held on to my visa process. Like it shouldn't take as long as it should have taken. But she's like, she doesn't think I'm traveling there to do something legal. And I'm like, isn't that the whole verification process? Isn't that what you're supposed to check? Like, why are you holding on? Just give me the documents, let me go. It's so weird. Like I've been that person who I have this weird dreams where I get to the airport, but the plane never leaves the terminal. So I thought maybe I was just cursed or something. I don't know if I was just cursed or something. But thankfully, I left Nigeria then, and then I went to Belgium. It was a 1 year internship.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had the papers for that 1 year as well, 1 year work permit. So I was like, okay, this is great. The company had a history of retaining interns long term. So that
Yeah.
was also my plan as well. Okay, so I'm going to work so hard. They're going to keep me. They're going to not want to lose me, and this is going to be my thing. So I got there, I did the job, I settled in, but unfortunately, the team that I joined was kind of transitioning. So the team was kind of changing shape, and then people were moving to different teams. And
Oh gosh.
at the end of my internship, I was just there like, okay. So I got like a 4 month extension to cover my manager's maternity break. That's how good I was. I was an intern and I was covering my manager's stuff. Like, and that too, it was just a lesson of like, you can't really trust anybody. You have to see if you don't have Bali, if you don't have the PR or the citizenship, you just have to keep advocating for yourself and really just looking out for yourself. Because my own thing was like, if I did well enough, they were gonna keep me. But even my manager wanted to keep me. Everybody loved me, but the decision was not hers to make. It was
Yeah.
based on so many other different people and so many other different things. So that was how that happened as well. So I had to leave and like just really go away from Belgium too as well. And the fun thing for that one was my husband also came to join me. Well, we hadn't married then, but he also came to join me on an internship. But the same story. His papers got screwed up. He couldn't extend. He couldn't do anything. Both of us pretty much went back to Nigeria. And it was so crazy. The Belgium one was even much more dramatic because I remember that I had applied for some kind of extension, either on my residency or my work permit, one of the
Mhm.
two. But Belgium was at that time going through some changes in the way they issued this document. So this thing that an application that should have taken just a couple of weeks also took so long as well. And by the time they finally responded, guess what they said? We
No.
give you 30 days to leave our country. I was like, me, a whole me. After all the stuff I had in this country, if I give you 30 days notice of Kinikok, I left Belgium too. And I went back to Nigeria. I went back to Nigeria. So, got to Nigeria, settled in as well. But thankfully, my husband was more gingered about Canada once all of that started to happen. And he actually started the process. Once we did our official legal marriage and all of that,
Yeah.
I became part of the process. And it was just kind of like a quiet assumption that we are not going anywhere unless we have residency or we have citizenship.
Yeah.
We're just going to stay here. We're not going to go anywhere again. We are not going through this drama. And that was really just it. And then we started the Canada process, and that too, pandemic happened, and then it took way longer than it should have. But finally, we're here. And I remember even while waiting, there was a temptation of, okay, what if we did UK global talent visa? What if we did
Yeah.
these other European countries were starting to offer like nomad visas and stuff. Like he's a
Yeah.
software developer, I was in IT as well, so it kind of just made sense. Like we might be able to work something out, but something about the process of worrying about documentation again just did not get us to like jump on it and do it. But yeah, that's my story, and thankfully Canada PR worked out. We got here 2 years ago, and we've been here since, and I am not worried about things.
I'm sorry I'm laughing at you, but
It's okay. It's okay.
but it's I feel you, to be honest, because that I have a friend who's going through something right now. The student, he made a mistake. He had a 90-day extension, forgot to apply. He was supposed to apply on maybe today. He applied. He was supposed to apply yesterday. He applied today. I told him to leave the country. He's heartbroken. His like it's just all this. So I kind of get like it can be extremely frustrating to be honest to deal with that. But in all of this, so that's like three back to backs, three different countries, three different cultures, three different ways of settling in.
Mhm.
Has it gotten better for you over time? So like, was it easier to settle into Canada than it was with Belgium, or like, did every country have its own nuances, stuff that you had to deal with?
I'd say each country had its own nuances. And like I was also a different person for each one. Like my situation was different. For UAE, it was just me. I was fresh out of school. I was very gingered to do good work and like just be find my own way in the world and all of that.
Mm.
And I landed with a team, like I landed with a family, like they were Sudanese, they were based in UAE though, and they were really helpful and friendly throughout it. Like they made the whole craziness of it, they made it really, really good.
Mm.
But it also helped me to kind of settle sort
Yeah.
of. But I don't think I ever really settled in the UAE. I mean, first of all, I was broke, so it's not like I was going anywhere. Like I didn't do any of the touristy thing, like nada. The bulk I did was like go to eat food at some really good spots because I was living with locals, right? But honestly, at that point, my priority was really just survival. Like, how do I get out of this situation I've gotten myself into, and like, how can I try to like make something out of it? So I wasn't even really thinking about like settling in. I just really wanted a job that would give me like a documentation kind of thing. And I remember like the reality of like I don't have a job because the family I settled in with, I had to move out from the place for like a month or so. Like it was just supposed to be for a brief period, and I had to start thinking about, oh, where would I stay? Where would I live? Like that was the first time in my life I had like panic attacks, and I had them quite often while in UAE. So UAE for me was really just survivalism, so to speak. Belgium, on the other hand, was much more settled. I had support, I had funds, I had other Nigerians who were in the same organization as I was, who were already there, and they were settled as well. So I could stay at their place. I had enough time and money to actually, rent out my own place. I got to stay with like a really nice family. And like life was good. I established like that was the first time I felt like, oh my God, I'm such an adult, right? Like, I had rent, I had bills, I had, I was paying my tea fare every month, and like I had, what's that thing? Commute to work back and forth. So it was really, really nice. And I even remember I was so comfortable. I did like an European tour kind of thing where I went like 5 countries backpacking kind of situation. So it was that nice. And of course, the team that I was working with as well, like, there were locals, but there were also a lot of immigrants as well. So a lot of shared experiences and people who had been through what I had been through and who were willing to put me through. Like it was such a huge contrast from UAE that I remember, not because I didn't have the funds, but because I still had documentation to sort out. My manager actually fronted my deposit for my rent, and she was like, "Yeah, just take it. It's fine. It's cool." And she just did that, just like that. Like that was how nice it was compared to UAE. UAE, I went into debt to get a place, a debt that I paid
Oh
off like
gosh.
way after I left the country, right? So it was just so much of a contrast, but it was still just me by myself. And then my fiance at that time came and joined me, and we were living separately, but it was really just I had a chance to truly experience the country and like get settled and do my own thing and find my own way around and like just really be good. When I came into Canada, I was married then, and then I had my daughter as well, and she was about a year plus at the time that we came in. So settling in then wasn't just me; it was like settling in as a family. Thankfully, my husband had a job before we landed, so I was the one who had to find the job and then sort out daycare for my daughter as well, and like do all of these things and the family doctor so that was a little bit more dramatic, but it was also definitely kind of low key as well because like I was okay. Like, yeah, it was dramatic, but honestly, I would say like I was okay. And in terms of culture itself, like Belgium people, Europeans and Canadians, like they have the same easy, vibey, chilly kind of situation. Like they're very cool, calm people who value like work-life balance and like quality of life and things like that. And that same culture really just carried through. So my settling in Canada felt like it felt very familiar. Like it didn't feel new or something. So it felt very familiar, and I think I kind of just clicked into the whole system pretty easily. The only thing that was different was just life with a family and then my daughter and like figuring out some things for her. So yeah, the experiences were very the same towards the end, but in the beginning, huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you say that the Belgians and the Canadians are pretty similar. I mean, I don't know enough Belgians. I just watch Belgian footballers, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
you know. But like, I find that actually interesting. I mean, I guess like it's always interesting to find out how similar humans are, even though we try to claim that we're very different. Because once you travel around enough, you start to find out that we're very similar. Maybe there are things that we behave differently to or react differently to, but overall the theme just seems to resonate.
Yeah.
I want to hop on something. I want to get on something you talk about a lot. I see you talk about a lot, job hunting. So we'll start off with basically asking. I'll start off basically asking around. So with the UAE and Belgium, you had a job, so you felt like it was just plug and play in some way. With Canada, it was different. Like you just came as a PR and then you had to start job hunting. So, like, what was it like for you? Like, hard, easy, I mean, yeah, you said it was chill and all that stuff, but how was it navigating that part? Because yeah, it was fresh time, new country, new people, and all that. You have a daughter right now. You need to think about bills, house rent. Your husband is working, yes, but you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I need to find stuff for myself. Like,
Yeah. So actually, I did search for jobs in all those other countries as well. UAE, I had to find something to sponsor my documents, which I didn't find. And I think that one taught me that the fact that a job is low paying doesn't mean you're going to get hired automatically. Belgium as well. Um, I tried to find a job towards the end of my documentation kind of thing, and I remember I'd get calls from recruiters all the way from UK, and they'll be like, "We loved your profile. You look so this, and that." But the minute I told them I needed documents, they ghost me. They
yeah.
go to me like immediately. But for Canada, Canada was interesting because like a lot of the work I did in Belgium and even when I went back to Nigeria was kind of preparing for my career in Canada. And like before I landed, I had interviews. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm already having interviews. I'm such a badass. Like as soon as I get here, I'm just gonna get a job and
I
that's
love
it.
your confidence, by the way.
Like oh I was so hyped up about the whole thing. And then I got to the country and I don't know what happened, but like 4 weeks in, crickets. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Like, I know how to get jobs. What's this? What is this wash of my character? This is not it. Like, the other countries, I could be like, you know what? It's because of my documentation. That's why they're not hiring me. But this one, I'm like, I don't need documents. Like, so why am I still not getting something? Like, it was really crazy. Like, okay, I had to be like, let's think about this thing again. How do I normally get jobs? What's my what's my process? How do I normally do this, right? Because I think about how I got the job in Belgium. I got it from Nigeria here, right? Competing with global people, and I was one who got that internship. Like I think about a lot of the roles that I've had. I'm like, okay, there's something I used to do. There's something I must have been doing that works for me, and I just need to do the same thing here again. So when it came down to it, I was like, okay, let's think about this. I'm a product manager, and product manager is not for the faint-hearted around here. And I had to really think about. I'm seeing a lot of job descriptions that were making me feel stupid. Like this is just not you. Like your product manager is not product manager enough for this job. I'm like, okay, cool, cool, cool. What can I do exactly? Like, okay, what's the one that me I can do? Like, what's my size exactly? And I had to really think through, like, okay, there's some specific aspects of this career that I do really well, that I have results for, and I excel at. And I just had to make a decision that I'm just going to focus on that and ignore everything else. And looking back, even that decision itself was quite interesting because like there's that thing of, oh, there aren't enough jobs. And here I was deciding to ignore the jobs that were available and only focus on a certain one. But I was just like, I'm gonna try this out, see what happens. And if this does not work out at all, then maybe I wasn't meant to do product management in Canada and I'm just gonna like maybe go do project or something else and settle with that permanently. And so, yeah, that's what I decided. So I was like, okay, I'm really good at product delivery, and I'm just going to focus on roles that wanted people to do that. So that meant that I created a resume speaking specifically to that. And I started to read through job descriptions because something that happens is that jobs have the same job title, but they are not each other's mates at all. So I started to like really, really pay close attention to job descriptions as well to see like, is this really me or is this not really aligned to like what I'm looking for? So thankfully through that process I was able to get the interview for my current role, and like the recruiter was like, oh yeah, your profile looked perfect, blah 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 blah. And when I got into the interview process as well, I had a lot of confidence. It was so much it flowed better because I was talking about things that I had a lot of, experience in. I had a lot of stories for. Like, it was, if you ask me anything about developers and like meeting deadlines, like I have stories for days to tell you, and like, what did I do? How did I overcome that challenge? Blah blah blah. I could do all of that. I contrast that to, like, I remember one of the interviews I had when I first landed. It was terrible. Like, it was really, really terrible. Like, they were asking me things, and not because I didn't, like, I knew what it was theoretically, but right there in the interview, in the moment, I just felt like, I'm not really sure. Like, it just felt so foreign and like different from me. And like, I tried to think back. It didn't help that I didn't feel super prepared going into that interview. But even that too was because I knew that something about that role was just not right for my profile. And I
Yeah.
just didn't have enough, I don't know, attractiveness to just go in and like really go hard for it. So yeah, contrasted to that, the process was so much more different, and thankfully I got the offer. So there was something I decided before I left Nigeria. I'm like, okay, these people around me, my husband, his friends, all of them, like, six-figure job was like their minimum. They weren't even discussing it. They weren't like, that was just the offer that they were going to get, non-negotiable. And I'm like, why am I not thinking like that? I went to the same school with all these kids. Like, we finished from the same course together. Like, why am I not seeing that for myself? So at that point, I just decided, me too, I want six-figure job. Like, anything less, I'm not interested. So when I got the offer for this role, really good interviews, conversations. I'd met everybody. And then they gave me an offer of 95K. I'm like, let's think about this thing. It's just like, come on, like, I did better than this. Like, but it was so interesting because when I had the first call with the recruiter, I thought he said his limit was 120K, 95 to 120K. So my own counter offer was for, give me the 120K that you initially said you could give. That's how they resigned the whole thing, and they were like, they're not doing again. I remember reading that email. I literally lied down on the floor in our apartment and I was rolling. Like, I was trying to think through the whole situation. Like, what just happened? Like, what did I miss? What just happened? So
Gosh.
I was just like, you know what? I've already lost out on the offer. What's the worst that can happen? So I went back to them and I wrote to them again, like, okay, fine, maybe not 120K, but can you do 110? And then that's when the guy responded, and he was like, oh no, their initial range that they gave me was 95 to 105. Like, that's what they were offering. I'm like, okay, I'll take the 105. Like, I'll take it like that. And if I perform better, you will increase my salary. And thankfully they accepted, and it was really good. But I did not get less than the six figure that I wanted. That's the most fun part of that story. But again, too, like, I feel like they were willing to come back to the table and like just go back and forth with me again, because it felt like they were wanting, to hire me specifically. So that was really good too. So my entire experience getting a job in Canada was very eye opening and also very humbling. But I feel like a lot of the lessons I learned through that process is actually what I'm trying to help other people learn now as well. Like, really understanding, what do you have to offer? What is the market asking for? How do you speak to that with confidence? How do you stand out as an expert? Because so many people are coming into this country day in, day out, and it doesn't feel like the number of jobs are increasing. Like, I'm in product
Yeah.
management. Like, when I compare the openings in US to the openings in Canada, it's like
Oh,
abysmal,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And yet there are still so many people who are training to become product managers, who already have experience in product, trying to get this job, and not to mention other, job roles as
Experienced.
well, right? So it was a very eye-opening process for me, Sha, basically. But yeah, that was my experience.
You know, I find what you say really interesting about. I think I know we do think about it when we are trying to get hired, but I don't think we think about it hard enough. When you describe how you say to yourself, "I'm going to, I'm going to ask myself what exactly I deliver properly, and then I'm going to design my CV, and niche down that." Like, it is genius, to be honest, because what it means is that you walk into an interview and you're just ready to go. Like, you're not worried about, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about because that's me. more often than not, we're like, oh, I'm just going to get hired and stuff, and we get caught up in certain things that means we don't get the role.
Yeah. I completely agree. Like, I tell people that advice of like, if you're not qualified for the role, still apply to it anyway. I'm like, it wasn't made for immigrants. It wasn't made for immigrants trying to get their very first job. If you're going for your second, third job, why not? Shoot for the stars, do whatever you want. You might get called back. But if you're an immigrant competing with other people to get that very first job, it is very, very important that you come from a place of strength versus a place of, let me just see what happens. Let me just see what happens is what make people spend 6 months, a whole year trying to get a job and still not able to find anything and just taking whatever else comes their way next. Right? Like that question of, okay, what can I do really, really well? It's not even just the confidence, it's also just the availability. Like it makes you also get creative because when you're like, okay, I've applied to all the things that seem available, then it makes you actually start to think like, okay, who needs this specific skill that I have to offer and where can I go find them? Right? Should I go maybe, if the job market is no longer available, should I go maybe go find an accelerators with a bunch of startup founders who can communicate? Like it makes you get creative as well on how to find opportunities for yourself. But a lot of people don't really say it that way per se because like the job is the job is the job, like just apply to what you're seeing and hope for the best and see what happens. And it takes it takes a lot of faith to do something like that as well,
Yeah.
right? Like it takes a lot of faith in yourself and your God and whatever else you believe in to be able to say like, okay, I'm going to focus on something very specific and trust that there has to be something for me here. Somebody must be willing to pay me a really good lot of money for this very specific thing that I know how to do. That is also a lot of self-esteem, a lot of faith, a lot of trust that things
Mhm.
will work out. Yeah. So yeah, it's not the most default thinking for most people, but people do start like when I break it down, then they're like, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Staying on that, like, so we're rounding up right now, so I probably have like
Yeah.
2, 3 more questions for you. But staying on that, if you had to say like what are the 3, 4 biggest mistakes people who are job hunting as immigrants make, like what would you say those mistakes are?
Yeah, so there's that one of applying to everything and anything. So
Yeah.
we've talked about that. Then I'd say the second one is not knowing how to speak to what a company needs, right? So there is what you can do. Then there's the problem that a company has, which is what they're hiring for, and you not being able to do a good job of like, I'm that person, right? If a company is looking for somebody to come in and manage a development team, your CV has to make it over obvious that you're somebody who's done exactly that before and you have the results for it. What I see people do is they submit a CV that shows all the skills that they do have to offer without any specification as to what the company is actually wanting to solve. And you kind of miss out on that. And then you hear things like, oh, you were a great candidate, your resume was very impressive, but we went with another candidate. That's when that kind of thing happens. And then another issue that I see is it kind of builds on each other, right? Um, when people don't get the roles that they want, then they start to apply to like lower roles with the hope that that would somehow boost their chances. But here's the thing, they're doing the same thing that they were doing before to apply to this same lower roles. And they're like, I'm even applying for customer service jobs and I'm not getting anything. And I'm like, yeah, like it wasn't about your qualification. The problem was never
Yeah.
your qualification. It was how you were applying to the jobs. You have to apply to the jobs the same way, even to get this kind of roles as well. So like people usually fall into that trap of like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I remember someone telling me once, like, she thought maybe her profile was intimidating to this, hiring people, and maybe that's why they were not hiring her. I'm like, well, your profile might be impressive, but it just might not be what they want or what they're looking for. Like the fact that you're overqualified doesn't mean people will hire you. Like I hear immigrants be like, I came to this country with 8, 10 years of experience and I still don't have a job. Like do not expect that your 8, 10 years of experience will automatically translate into like the person who gets hired. Like there's prep work to be done to make sure that we are shaping up all of those years of experience to fit what it is that a company is looking for. And that's when you actually get that call back. So like those are a couple of things. And of course in the interviews as well, like one of the mistakes that I made then was, let's cram all the framework and all the theories and hope
Uh,
that we'll perform well in the interview and like just go do all the thing. I see people do that a lot. And one thing I would say to that is stories are powerful. Stories show expertise. Stories answering a question on like how would you do something, being able to answer it from a place of like, this is something that happened to me before. This was exactly how I went through it. This was the results. This was the challenges that I faced. This was the failures that I had and I overcame, is a lot more stronger answer than, oh yeah, this is this framework on how to solve this problem and SWOT analysis and things like that. And that's something people default to so much, not taking the time to really dig through their stories, their journeys, their expertise to find compelling, stories, or even know how to tell the stories really compelling so that it presents you as a much more stronger candidate than someone else who is also, pouring out what they've read on some course or program or something. So those are some of the common mistakes I see, and like fixing one or two of them, like not even all of them. If you fix just one or two, it can change the game for your entire job search, like night to day, much less fixing as many of them as possible. So yeah.
that's interesting. Now, I think so. If seeing you, what you just talking about, what you just said now, someone who's landing today, who just landed today, like if you said to say he has a playbook for trying to get a job, like he hit the ground running playbook, like what would you like? What are the top three things that you tell the person? Hey, do one, two, three.
Yeah. Number one, figure out what you can do in your sleep. Like, write it out. Like, what is the thing that I can help a company do? What problems can I help a company solve beyond my job title? Like, regardless of what your job title is, figure out what is your value proposition to a company. And then get really, really good at looking through job descriptions to really see companies who are wanting those things, right? Those are the jobs that you're going to prioritize your applications for. Once you've done that, then get really good at being able to match job descriptions to your resumes. And that would look like if something is on the job description, make sure it's reflected in your resume and has some kind of metric, relevant metric attached to it. So if the job description says ability to lead a team and do something, something, have it in your resume, led a team to do this exact relevant thing that resulted in this exact relevant result. So learn how to do that, and that helps your resume scan through the ATS and the automation and all of that, and also make sure your resume actually impresses a hiring manager. Once you know how to do that really well, go ahead, start applying to the jobs and continue to put in your best effort, but also start thinking about who is most likely to hire me, what kind of people already have the jobs that I want, like doing the exact same thing that I'm trying to do, and where can I start to find them? And once you have a really good job application process set up, consider start talking to people as well. People call it networking and coffee chats and blah blah blah. Call it whatever you want to call it, but just think of it as I want to try to understand the nuances of getting into my field in this part of the world, right? So ask people about the application experience, ask people about the things that they did, ask people about how they interviewed or what the interview process was like, just so you can start to get familiar and you have enough information to reach out to people. And the final one would be don't, oh, well, it's hard to not be, but try not to be shy to show your receipts, right? If you're good at something, get really comfortable about talking about the results you've achieved. Get really good at being able to, like, you have a stellar resume, be able to communicate that in person. Get really good at also your stories, the things you've achieved. Like, start thinking about for every single thing on that job description, where is the time, like, what is the time I've done it before? What results did I achieve? The whole star format and all of
Yeah.
that. Start outlining some of those stories so that when it's time for the interview, it's so easy for you to just tap in and share those stories versus trying to prep with, cramming documents and formulas and things like that. So that would be the playbook that I offer. And I think the last part would also be reviewing your process, right? If you can't do it every week, every 2 weeks, start to think about what have I done for my job search this week? What has worked? What has not worked? What can I start to do differently? What else have I not tried? Don't wait for a long period before you actually start thinking of reviewing. And you probably hear this a lot, like, oh, apply to like 150 jobs, 200 jobs, blah, blah, blah. I have zero opinions on that. If you want to do 200, do 200. My thing is just make sure 60% of the time you're spending it applying to high quality applications that are really good fit for your profile. If you want to spend the remaining 40% applying to every single thing you see on LinkedIn, that's your choice. But just make sure 60% of the time it's spent on the ones that are really high quality applications or really high quality conversations with people who can actually get you the job that you're looking for. So yeah.
That's a damn good playbook.
Thank you.
And I totally agree with what you say about I call them informational interviews. I did like 20 of them before I left Nigeria. Like I was just speaking to people. When I'm done with the call, I'll be like, hey, do you know someone I can talk to who I should talk to? And they would always introduce you to someone else. Like it was super helpful for me, for my story, for how I wanted to approach my job hunt, for confidence. Like it's just super helpful, to be honest. Thank you so much for that. For this, like, this has been really good talking to you about this. Thank
That's a
you.
lot more than I thought I would. Thank you for that.
No, I mean, I really enjoyed laughing at you though. Like your back foot. Like that was something.
Yeah, let's see next, but thank God for where we are at.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the end. I really appreciate that. Like, if you know someone who finds this useful, please share with them. And as I always say, please like, share, subscribe. Just support us, please. With that, peace out.